Hello,
Hello.
everybody. Hi, Andrea. It's so good to see you.
Hello. So good to see you
Hello.
too.
Hey, everybody joining us. Welcome to our conversation today that's all going to be around compassionate agility and leading change with care. My name is Sanja Licina. I am the president of the Employee Experience Business Unit at QuestionPro, and I am absolutely thrilled to welcome my friend, friend first, but also customer, and just a human being that I've adored and looked up to so much since the day we met. I'll let Andrea in a minute introduce herself, but I'll just give a little bit of a background around just the impression she's left on me and how we've known each other. So Andrea and I think crossed paths about 3 years ago. And you'll notice this as soon as I give her a chance to start talking, she lives and breathes compassion. And she is a person that is so incredibly easy to connect with. Every single word of hers, I've held onto from the moment that we met. And I just felt like I've learned so much from her. And so having this really truly pleasure and honor of being her friend and having an opportunity to work on projects with her. We do this about once a year, maybe twice, right, Andrea? Where I'm like,
We have
please
to.
call. I know,
We have to. Yeah.
we have to have this conversation, and I can't keep this like luxury of your knowledge and everything
Oh
all
my.
to myself. So
Oh, Sanja,
um,
thank you.
and so it's just a pleasure to have you on as our last really conversation webinar of the year. I know you and I were connecting and trying to think about like what topic do we tackle and what's most important. And my goodness, this year, I feel like we say that most years, but this year it's just been something really different and interesting with everything that's been going on in the world. And so I think that this topic, almost like no matter what role you're in, we focused a little bit towards HR because that's who a lot of our customers are. But I think no matter what leadership role you're in, what job you're doing, it can definitely resonate. So before we jump into the incredible content that Andrea has prepared, Andrea, do you mind please telling our friends a little bit more about yourself,
Yeah.
who you are, your work, and then we'll jump right in.
Absolutely. Yes, I can say a few things. First of all, I just have to echo the joy of connecting with you, Sanja. And I'm so honored that you keep inviting me back to have these really rich conversations. So thank you. So I was an academic for most of my adult life. I studied compassion, among other things, interdisciplinarily. So I studied it from the lens of neuroscience and psychology and therapy, but also from the lenses of history and religious traditions and philosophy. So lately, in the past 5 or so years, kind of since COVID, I've been applying all of that work that I did towards leadership development, because I think we're in a time where more than ever, we need compassionate leaders. And especially when everything is changing and so ambiguous and in so much flux, compassion truly is a power skill for leaders. So yeah, that's what I do now. I'm a coach. I am a keynote speaker, and I also just do trainings and workshops for organizations. So that's a little bit about me and my work.
Well, thank you for that introduction. And we actually, one of the events we had Andrea join us for she was a keynote at our company event last year. And I actually invited all of our colleagues because it was one of the sessions where everybody left and it was about self-compassion, where I just could never stop hearing good things about it and how much people needed it and how much it resonated. So we've definitely been very lucky as a company also to have the benefit of hearing you speak and share your knowledge. And so I'm so glad to have you back.
Thank you. It's awesome to be here.
For all of you that have joined us, please feel free. We do have content ready. Andrea is going to go through a lot of really good takeaways, really good advice, really great stories. Also, thank you so much for those of you who submitted questions ahead of time. We're definitely going to cover those as well. But if you're joining us now and if you didn't have a chance to submit something ahead of time, please feel free to enter it in the chat. We'll definitely keep an eye out as we go through our conversation, go through the presentation. So please feel free to keep it as interactive as you'd like. So without further ado, let's kick it off.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I'm going to start out with a story. I grew up on a horse farm. I grew up riding horses in rural Minnesota, and I competed. I did eventing. And when I was 16, my horse Chessa and I entered a pretty significant eventing competition. It was in my home state. Now, if you don't know about eventing, let me tell you a little bit of background. So there's this element called the cross-country course, and it requires horse and rider to gallop through the countryside, jumping over large natural obstacles and, through water and ditches and banks, and it's really high octane. So at the start signal, Chessa and I took off from the start box down a big hill towards the first obstacle. It was a 1.5 meter stack of logs, and behind it, there was a hidden ditch. As we approached this jump, I could feel Chessa hesitate. Her hindquarters swerved, her head jutted up, her ears kind of went sideways, and I knew that she was getting ready to refuse the jump. She was scared, and now I was scared. Now, Chessa and I were very different species, different bodies, different brains, and very different perspectives on this challenging uncertainty ahead of us. And I'm talking literally here. You see, horses have eyes on the sides of their head, and they actually have a blind spot right in front of them. Me, eyes right in front of my face, like most humans. And I knew about the ditch on the other side. And so as we approached it, it looked different to both of us. And in that moment, as we approached this challenge with our very different perspectives and fears, we needed to lean into our shared understanding, the connection, the empathy, the trust that we had built over time, over years. And so the microsecond she started to swerve and slow down, I chose intentional connection. I applied reassuring pressure on her sides with both of my legs. I reached back and I touched her hindquarters with my riding crop. And then I leaned forward and I said in her ear, "Come on, Chessa, we've got this." I remember feeling her strides even out and her body straighten and her momentum just collect beneath me. And y'all, I can't describe the exhilaration of feeling in real time that a 1,500-pound animal is just deciding to trust you, despite these radically different visions and fears. Chessa jumped at just the right moment with just the right arc and momentum needed to clear that hidden ditch on the other side of that obstacle. And we went on to win the entire competition. To this day, it's one of the most beautiful and powerful memories of my life. Just like Chessa and me so long ago, that was 95, all of us are in the start box of, a really complex course. So many obstacles, so many unknowns. There's economic uncertainty, there's the AI revolution, and everything following from those two things. Leaders are needing to make swift, strong decisions. Sometimes they're needing to apply pressure to people who feel scared, but in a way that communicates care and imparts courage. And so today, what I want to do is give you some inspiration and some tools for doing all of that with something I call compassionate agility, which means the ability to prioritize empathic connection and support while deftly and boldly navigating challenge and change. And so in the next hour or so, this is what we're going to talk about. We'll talk about compassionately agile team building, compassionately agile decision making, compassionately agile emotional grounding for yourself, and then compassionately agile self-leadership, especially when you think about the legacy you want to leave as a leader during a volatile time. So let's go ahead and just dive right in. In the fall of 2019, Pamela Maynard, she's pictured here, took the helm of Avanade, which is a large London-based tech company. Now, in the first 18 months of her tenure as one of the first and only Black female CEOs in tech, 3 societal crises descended. There was the COVID-19 pandemic, there was the death of George Floyd, and there was the conflict between Ukraine and Russia, all those things. Now, she had been prepared for a stressful first year as CEO, but she had not anticipated the onset of a global polycrisis on top of that. Now, Maynard's leadership style of combining robust care with bold decisiveness went on display right away. She called together her leaders, and this is what she said. Everyone, these challenges are anxiety producing. I'm feeling it along with you. And I don't have all the answers, but here's the process I'll be going through to find them. You'll be a part of it. And here's how. Know that some balls are going to drop. Know that this will get messy. You'll need to adjust in ways you never thought you'd have to. But in the end, we'll have more clarity and we will have achieved it together. Close quote. And there was so much they achieved. During one of the most, traumatic and chaotic eras in history, recent history anyway, Avanade exploded with record-setting company growth, reaching an all-time peak revenue of $2 billion in 2022, after a few years with Pamela Maynard heading it up. This is how she sums it up. There's no trade-off between care and progress. No trade-off between care and progress. So her example provides just some guideposts for compassionately agile team building, which is our first topic here, amidst challenge and change. Now, someone asked in the questions beforehand, someone asked about how do you create a compassionate and trustful environment amongst team members when things are changing? All of what I'm about to say is going to address that question. Then there it is here on our screen. Okay. So I'm going to rattle through some stuff, but Sanja, feel free to interrupt me with any questions, or maybe I'll ask you a question along the way too.
I'm getting ready with my first one that I know we talked about when we first reviewed the material, so I'm ready.
It's on deck. All right, perfect. First of all, there's no use faking it. People know anyway when things are changing and there's a lot of uncertainty. They know that you don't have all the answers, and so when you acknowledge that out loud, say, I don't have all the answers, but I'm committed to the process. And here's my way forward. Here's what I'm envisioning. You are displaying strength and you're cultivating trust versus leaders who pretend to have it all together and have it all mapped out. So to the extent you can, be transparent about what you know with the changes. What can you confidently and safely communicate to your team? Even if some things need to remain confidential, are there just a couple pieces you can safely relay? Keep your team as informed as you can and as often and as consistently as you can.
And Andrea, here's where I'll jump in, because when we were preparing, I remember even as a leader, sometimes I get information and I know that it's difficult and it's going to be either impacting my team or the organization, or it's just, whether it's a layoff. I remember early in my career, I had to deal with that. And it was so, I was not anything similar to what Pamela had to deal with by any means, but I just remember being in my mid-20s and leading a team for the first time, and that was during the recession. What was that, 2008? And I was like, I just don't know what to do. I knew it was coming, and I couldn't tell people because there was going to be an announcement. And so my question to you is that, and I know it's not black and white, and I know if it was a simple answer, it would have been written everywhere. But if somebody, so that's an example for me from almost 20 years ago, but fast forward to today, I really like to tell my team as much as possible, because one of the things that I've learned in my previous job is I have a son, and he was born very suddenly. And I had this whole plan of how I was going to go into maternity leave and leave my team prepared. And that did not happen, because he's happy and healthy, but he appeared about 3-4 weeks before his due date. And I remember some of my team members, and one in particular, telling me like, wow, I had no idea how much you shielded us from certain things from my direct leader, and how much I would filter information and not necessarily pass it on. And I always did that with the best intentions, because I wanted to protect my team, or I wanted to make sure that, they were only getting news that they could handle, and the rest, I would just figure out. And maybe sometimes I still do that, but it definitely more often than not, I'm trying to be transparent. To make sure that the team realizes what's happening, because I also think that's a developmental opportunity. Now, going back, reeling myself back into the question is, what would you recommend to leaders? Because again, there's not a black and white, and there might be, maybe when it comes to layoffs, usually it's a very, there's a clear directive to say, we're going to announce at this time, please don't tell anyone before. So maybe that's, a little bit more forward, but when you're a leader and you're trying to think, where do I protect? Where am I transparent? What's appropriate even for me to
Mhm.
say, or where might I be breaking trust? Like, what would you be your guidance around like those guardrails as somebody
Yeah,
is thinking through these decisions? Because I
yeah.
know I'm still learning, even after like decades of experience, I don't have it figured out. And like you, I study this. So
I know. And
please share, please share.
every situation is so different. And I think the first thing to say is just how hard it remains. I don't think there's any easy way through this, because you're walking the line between wanting to stay trustingly connected to your team members and really wanting to be very responsible with sensitive information. And you have to do both. So how? A couple things you can say. You can say something like, you all know our company's been going through some challenging times, or there's been a lot of flux lately, and decisions are being made, and we're looking into all kinds of options. You can just talk about the process, that like name the fact that things are shifting, and that decisions are being made that we're going to learn about, but there's all kinds of options, right? Second thing you can say is assure people that you are going to communicate information as soon as it's possible. So you could say, I wish I could, but I can't tell you anything right now, but I will tell you right away once I have permission to share, or once that information is available for me to share. And then I think it's important to create a safe space for employees to share their concerns and to be as vulnerable and human as you can about that. This is maybe the most important point, because even after you say like decisions are being made, we're in a challenging time, I can't share a lot, but I will as soon as I can, there has to be this like, but I'm with you in this. And there was one leader I worked with who told her team, everyone, this is hard on all of us. I have lost 10 pounds in the last month, and I'm not even trying to lose weight. People, this is not my dream diet. So it's like interjecting a bit of humanity into the conversation, I think, is really good too.
I love that. Well, I definitely get more gray hair, which you cannot see because it, still gets colored, maybe a few more wrinkles.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
everyone's got one of, their way of managing. And so Anne in the comments that communication is key. And I could
yeah,
not agree with that more. And I think for me, even like in my personal life and in my professional life, it is, I think, communicating, over communicating, saying it in different ways. It's just absolutely necessary. And then Andrea, to your point, even when you don't necessarily have all the answers, but reassuring people that as soon as you know more,
Mhm.
they'll be the first to know, I think is really important. And I know one of the things, so of course I QuestionPro is a survey company. And so I always think about how can surveys be helpful,
Yeah,
because that's my life's work right now. And so one of the things that Andrea and I were also talking about as well is, for me, it's been interesting both in surveys and in human communication. I realize that sometimes people have different relationship with different individuals inside the organization. And so there might be, for example, my team members that maybe don't feel as comfortable often raising concerns to me, but they might do it to one of my colleagues or one of their peers. And so always keeping those conversations open is really important, because you never know when is going to be a time when somebody is going to bring something up. And even it's happened to reverse to me, where other teams in maybe our mentoring conversations or our monthly catch-ups would bring something up where I would say, does your direct leader know about this? Have you spoken with them? They might be able to action it more, and they might say, not exactly, because it hasn't come up like it has with you. So I think having more conversations across the board is
yeah,
really helpful. And then taking it back to surveys too, we've had an increasing number of our clients, for example, have always on surveys or pulse surveys,
sure.
because always on sometimes still takes for somebody to be proactive and put in a comment or a response.
Mhm.
And pulse surveys have definitely seen for individuals, like some people, and I know all of us know them, have like no problem raising their hand, bringing up
Yep.
what's top of their mind. But oftentimes maybe that's a little bit more of an exception than the norm.
Yeah.
And it's so important to understand and like really surface what different people have in mind. And so that's where we've actually seen quite an uptick in pulse surveys when there are different things happening inside the organization. for the organization to proactively go to employees and say, I really want to know what's going on with you and what you're thinking and what you're concerned about. And we want to give you different avenues to be able to do that. So maybe it doesn't matter if you have a brilliant relationship with your leader. Maybe you're still a little nervous to voice that in a one-on-one, but we want to give you these different ways to be able to bring it up.
Yes, I love that because it also keeps in mind people's very different communication styles, learning styles, and cultural backgrounds when it comes to communicating, especially with people in authority. So love it. Love it. Yes. I'm going to move on with a couple more points on this team building section here. So we've already talked about this a little bit, but creating space for emotions, or reassurance of witness, and then also space for emotions. Pamela Maynard said, I'm feeling this along with you. And then also creating an environment, saying, this is, people need to emote when things are stressful. They need it. Emotional connection in times of stress, neurobiologically, it deactivates the brain's threat detection system, and it strengthens executive and prefrontal cortical functioning. So when people can connect with emotionally with each other, basically it helps them stop freaking out so that they can be clearer and more creative and more flexible and more agile and perform under pressure. So it's imperative to provide a safe environment to do that. Open questions like, hey, what are you worried about? How are things feeling regarding X, Y, or Z? How can I best support you? And then just listening without trying to fix or defend or set straight, just really trying to understand and let the things that people share sink in and help inform your own decision-making and leadership. I like how Pamela Maynard normalized the controlled chaos. So she talked about drop balls, endless unknowns, a marathon of sprints, imperfect adjustments. All of this is totally normal when there are big changes and challenges afoot, structural or in terms of new technology adaptation or whatever. And so say that because it gives people this huge inward strength to know that, hey, my leader understands things aren't going to be perfect, but they believe in us and in this process. Sanja earlier had asked a question about like, yeah, but what if people slack off or just don't deliver? And I'm like, that's a really good question.
I was actually thinking about this. I'm like, where did I ask this? Was this around this moment? So again, one of the luxuries I have, and that's what I was mentioning, please feel free to ask additional questions than you had before while you have Andrea. So a lot of times when I'm with my smart friends, I ask them questions that I have top of mind. And so for those of you who know me, or maybe you're getting to know me for the first time now, I am generally very compassionate, empathetic. I really try to find the best in people, and sometimes even I personally lean on the more of the side of give somebody benefit of doubt. You haven't walked in their shoes, you don't know what's going on, but I've actually even had my team members say before, like, "Hey, what's going on with so and so? Why is this person not showing up to meetings? What's happening?" And so I've struggled with that because I don't know if I've been necessarily taken advantage of before, my kindness. I want to say maybe sometimes, maybe not. But sometimes there's this perception around the team where if somebody is not performing, what's going on? Does that give me the door to not perform? Because I've also talked to my team members sometimes when people would say, oh, but this person only did so much. Like, why do we need to do more? Because we do, because we can. Like, we still want to strive for the best. And so that was like Andrea was saying, that was my question to her with this chaos, this compassion of wanting to be there for people. Unfortunately, there are going to be people who are going to take advantage. And so how do you message that? It's not an open door to like perform to the lowest denominator. Like that's not what we're striving for.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I think just communicating expectations for excellence as much as that is possible, even amidst the chaos. So you can say something like, team, when you're in your team huddle, there's a lot up in the air right now. And even though we're all feeling the stress and things won't feel buttoned up for a while, we still need to do excellent work together. And so the key is to stay connected, to be communicating. So let's all, take a minute to write down one thing we can offer the team amidst this, and then one thing that we need to do our best work amidst all of this uncertainty. So just taking a moment really to communicate, yes, it's chaotic and we need to bring it. We need to show up. So how do we do this together? And then if somebody is really, if their performance is being significantly impacted, then yes, of course, it's time for a one-on-one. Just, and you can say some of the same things. There's a lot up in the air right now. I'm feeling the stress. How are you feeling the stress? Like, how can we keep doing excellent work together? Because maybe I've noticed XYZ in XYZ context. How can I support you to step into your best here? Does that help?
It helped me. I know. And again, like it's not every person's different. It's not always black and white, but to your point, opening that conversation, I think one, if a person is taking advantage of the situation, they'll realize that it's not something that's necessarily going to slide. And if person needs more help, it gives that opening to really understand what can we do together to be able, like, so maybe you were giving, you were reaching your goals and you were at 100% and the quarter passed, but something happened. Let's have that conversation to calibrate expectations maybe, or give additional tools for what can help. So again, a lot of these, I think, situations don't have a silver bullet kind of answer, but a lot of it is really that compassionate curiosity and understanding what's happening and bringing in people and letting each person be an individual. And connecting in different ways. So yes, I think it helps. Again, it's not a follow step one and then after step one, follow step two, because it's everything's going to have its own journey, but it's good to keep a close eye out and again, continue to have conversations.
Yes, absolutely. I second all that. Okay. So a couple other points on team building. Include your team in the answer finding. So I love how Pamela said, I don't have the answers. Excuse me. Sorry. But here's the process I'll be going through to find them. And here's how you'll have a part. And here's how you'll have a part. And I always feel like, oh, here's how you'll have a part. And that creates a sense of collaboration. Not that like dictates are coming from on high for us to get all through this together, but like we are bringing our best gifts, ideas, and solutions all to the table as we figure this out.
Well, and that's like, again, one thing that I've seen in our research is that to your point, two different benefits. One is that not everything is coming just top down and employees across the board are not feeling like I'm being told to do something, but you don't necessarily understand the whole reality. You don't understand my reality. But maybe, I don't know if it's more importantly or equally as important. I know whenever we've practiced that, we've learned so much. And I always gotten ideas that I actually totally didn't have because maybe it was a perspective I was missing or an important piece of information. Like I think sometimes as leaders, we feel like we need to be and have the sum of all parts of all of our teams and all of our employees. And that's impossible. Like it is never going to happen. Like the collective is always going to know more. And so one, having that input and those answers is really useful. And I often say this, and I have not cracked this yet, but it was actually even talking to my son. So my son is 7 years old. And for those of you who have kids, I mean, maybe experience this first time, like it is incredible how kids think because they don't have this like limitation of things that now as grown-ups we believe are not possible, right? They're thinking outside of the box all the time there. And so I'm hoping that as adults, we're going to continue to find actually ways to do that. And I find that, you can see both Andrea and I have PhDs. I can't speak to Andrea, but I can tell you like all my life I've been very methodical and to get the degrees and different things, like I followed a certain path. So maybe I'm not always the most creative. And I try to really surround myself with people that can think about like, what ifs, what about these completely different paths? What about things that we completely haven't thought about? And of course, one of the things that we know with the way technology advances, there are always these different ideas and additional things we can experiment with that maybe didn't even exist yesterday. So I do think that including the team in answer finding with all of these like increasingly rapid changes is actually going to become like exponentially more useful.
Absolutely.
And I think, Andrea, this ties to your first point that was saying, like, don't pretend like you have all the answers, like say when you don't know. So anyways, I think that like It rounds it out really well. Like definitely include
Yes.
for the best. It's not just for show.
I love what Anne said too, is summing all of that goodness that you just communicated up. I believe a good leader is not the one who knows all the answers, but the one that's open to work with their team and find solutions together. Especially when we've got multi-generational teams that have access and experience with things that very different worldviews, very different technologies, very different ways of finding solutions. Like that's a wealth of answer finding on your team. So ask. And use a QuestionPro survey to do it.
She said it, I did.
Yeah, I know, right? I'll promote QuestionPro all day long. I love it. I love QuestionPro so much. All right, I'm going to move on just for the sake of time. I already mentioned this a little bit earlier. So let's move on to the second part here, which is about decision making. In a recent article on LinkedIn, Jessica Kriegel, she's Chief Strategy Officer at Culture Partners, she said this about the current state of HR. Quote, HR is being asked to transform organizations, protect people, guard the brand, interpret data, redesign workflows, deliver speed, and soften every impact for the workforce. No function can do all of that while also serving as the emotional cushion for every uncomfortable moment, close quote. So several things struck me about her comments here. First of all the things she listed involve making decisions, and all of them are relevant right now from every HR person I've talked to. It's like, yes, the expectations are massive. And a lot of it involves making decisions about hiring, firing, budgets, programs, timelines, policies, workflows, workloads, employee experience, everything. But the second thing is that now I follow Jessica on LinkedIn and I know she cares about caring leadership. And yet she's warning HR leaders to not siphon off their energy by being an emotional cushion for all the uncomfortableness that comes with change and ambiguity. And so this quote makes me wonder, how do you make good decisions on high stakes issues in a way that's both empathic and really efficient, connected with people, but also confident, caring, and yet bold and courageous? That's a fine line, but that's what compassionate agility means. So the first move is to listen. We've already talked about this, but it's worth saying again. Ask, tend, mull. Ask, tend, mull. Do it some more. Especially when there's uncertainty, it's essential to gather input from diverse people and teams. You do want to be inclusive. You want to get as many angles on the problem as possible. But keep in mind, you also want to be strategic and efficient. This is a little bit of a side story here. I'll leave this up while I tell the story. I once worked with a Fortune 500 company during a big change, actually a big set of changes. This was a company really dedicated to inclusion and belonging. And the leaders, especially the HR leaders, were heavily invested into listening to as many people as possible as they were deciding on ways to, quote, remove layers and realize efficiency gains. In other words, trim ranks and cut programs. A lot of companies are in that place. The problem is that they listened and listened and listened, but dragged their feet when it came to acting and deciding. The chief people officer there called it niceness-itis. And someone actually asked a question about, how do you make decisions, but you want to be nice too. Like you struggle with that. And so it's so interesting. It was almost like the chief people officer was like, it's like a sickness where, this niceness-itis is impeding the momentum we need to, as a company, shift into the new phase of our evolution, which is a good phase, even though it's hard. So my point is that, yes, gather input widely and inclusively, but be strategic. And these are some questions to consider. This has been up here for a while, finally getting to the content. But are there more efficient ways of gathering? Ask yourself, how will I know when I've listened long enough and widely enough and I'm able to act? Ask yourself whose input is really crucial and why. And then how do you make sure you're listening in not a biased way, just to your inner circle? But that's so easy to do, right? We all gravitate towards that unless we're self-aware and conscious of
self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Am I remembering that one right? You're looking for information to confirm what you already think.
Exactly. And our brains are built to do that. So we have to be conscious to fight it, right? But then on the other side, listening too long to too much diversity and to, everybody and just dragging your feet. And I just wanted to ask Sanja here. Sanja, I mean, what are some of the ways you've helped HR leaders gather input in inclusive ways, but also be efficient in their decision
Yeah.
making?
Yeah, well, and this really resonates with me because I also run our employee surveys at QuestionPro, and I read every single comment because as much as AI can do a really nice job summarizing, like you lose some of that sentiment.
Yeah.
And I sometimes, you'll read through things and you'll get contradicting opinions, or you'll realize even, back to Anne's point about communication earlier, there's some things where employees are understanding, but it's about communication. And I'll realize we haven't explained this enough.
Yeah.
But then you realize that no matter what, you're never going to be able to please everybody.
That's right.
And so for a lot of the different things, like to your point, and for me, again, like it's because a lot of the work is survey work. We get a lot of input from different parts of the organization. And so you really have to be mindful around, let me take all of this in. And then let me realize, I'm giggling because I'm thinking I have this great friend, Holly, who loves tacos. And I think of the saying, like, not everyone is going to like you. You're not a taco. And so you have to, think that, especially if you're reshaping the organization or if you're changing the culture, there are going to be people that are still going to be really happy and it's going to resonate with. And then maybe for some individuals, it's not going to be a good fit anymore. And that's okay too. That's like for us as, as people, I'm probably, there's some things that are very different about me now than maybe in my 20s. And if there are certain people that maybe I don't like feel as good, being a friend or a companion, that's okay too. So I think that that's one thing, is taking all of that information in, maybe sometimes taking it one step further. Like if you're seeing, maybe if it's not a one-off comment, or even if it is, but if it's something that really, piques your curiosity in a way that you think that there's more, maybe you dig into it a little bit to understand the why underneath it. Because especially I feel like when you're getting a wide amount of input, you don't always understand maybe where a person is coming from, especially if they're telling you something that surprises you. And so to me, to really dig in and understand, well, where is this person coming from? Why do they feel this way? What's maybe causing this? Is there some additional underlying issue that's happening that maybe wasn't articulated in a specific comment or conversation? I think that's really important. And so again, because most of the work that I do is surveys, I have this luxury of getting wide amount of information, then being able to dig in. And then again, saying like, what do we want to be our identity of the company? What do we need to accomplish? And then how are we very clear about that direction? And as much as I do believe that organizations think about who do they want to bring on board, I remember one of my first CEOs said, we have to be very smart about electing people. And then if we do a really good job, then we need to do our best to create an atmosphere that's right for them. I think that's important. And then in an organizational change, if at some point you decide you need to change your identity, whether it's, to continue to thrive in a market, or because you have to pivot, or because something big happened that you couldn't anticipate or foresee, and you want to continue to be successful, to communicate that back to your employees and then allow them to make that decision. Is this still the right fit for me? So I don't, that was a lot going on in there, but it's, sometimes it's tough because a lot of times, like, you will get attached to people you work with and you do feel the sense of community, and it doesn't feel good to necessarily have to make strategic decisions where somebody might not want to be with you anymore, but you have to do that oftentimes as the environment changes.
Good stuff. Oh my gosh, so much good stuff in everything you just said. I second all of it. What strikes me most is how not everybody is going to like you. And just getting used to that as a leader and change, that's hard. It has to do with my next point, which is about care. Don't carry people's ire or their confusion that may be personally directed at you. That's normal. Instead, care by being curious. Like you said, well, what's underneath that comment or that frustration or that fear, so I can understand it better. Even if the person continues to not like me very much, it's my job as a leader to understand. So but that's a lot of emotional work. And
It
part of
is. It
that.
is. But I think any of us, and I think probably many of us, especially if you're on this conversation with us, have had a point in our life where we maybe try to be everything to everyone.
Mhm.
And it depends how long it takes you to realize you just can't, that it is
Yeah.
humanly impossible. And then you start to disappoint a lot of different people because you try to show up in too many different ways. And I think the same happens for an organization. So at some point and unfortunately, a lot of times we still have to learn some of these things on our own where it's like, wait, but I think I can manage. And then all of a sudden you realize that maybe you can't and pivot, but that's, yeah, it would be nice to be liked by everyone, but I just, I don't think it's possible.
No, I don't think so either. I just want to mention before our next point about care, don't carry. There's some science behind the goodness of being able to enact confident and timely actions and decisions. They are very compassionate because it helps establish a steady, structured, rhythmic forward momentum that people need to feel safe in times of change. There's a part of the brain called the diencephalon, and it processes rhythm, and it plays a crucial role in providing a sense of safety and comfort for people. And this is why when babies are upset, you'll see a parent, rocking them. We do this instinctively. And similarly, as leaders, we can implement strategies that can maintain some momentum within our teams. So even if people don't love the content of your decisions, if your process isn't such that you're dragging your feet and things are, inconsistent, if there's some level of movement, momentum, and consistency, it makes people feel steady, like there's comfort, there's psychological safety here, even if I don't love everything that's happening. So for what that's worth, I want to move on to compassionately agile emotion regulation as a leader, which has to do with everything we've been talking about already. But somebody asked a question ahead of the webinar about how to master emotional intelligence while tackling influential decisions. And this, what I'm about to share, has everything to do with that. It's basically a lesson in Stoicism. Epictetus, back from, a few centuries BC, there's only one way to happiness, and that is to cease worrying about things which are beyond the power of our will. So let me tell you a little bit of a story here. When I was working on my PhD in Chicago, neuroscientist Jean Decisive, I don't think I'm saying his name right, but his team at UFC published some really fascinating research showing that ER doctors have decreased activation in the brain centers that process empathy as compared to non-doctors. And the hypothesis about this was that they have learned to downregulate or dampen their pain empathy response in order to, as the researchers put it, free up cognitive resources necessary for being of assistance.
Wow.
So it's not that the doctors don't care. It's that they know and they've learned that caring too much is going to get in the way of being helpful.
Oh.
Let that sink in for a minute. Let it sink in. So yes, create a safe container for your team, your patients, whoever, to process the change, but do not yourself be the container. Care, don't carry, because no one will be helped if your compassion results in you drowning underneath the weight of other people's emotional distress. Care, don't carry. Screenshot this, okay? Now, maybe
I think I'm going to need to print this everywhere because this is one thing I have not mastered in my professional or personal life at all.
I know. Well,
I have Tupperware everywhere. I have containers. I'm carrying everything.
Yes, it's everywhere. Well, you like me, like we're born empaths. And so it's like, okay, I should care, not carry. How do I do that? It's hard. Like, I'm not built that way.
It sounds so lovely to be able to do that.
I know. Honestly, the mantra is half the battle. Like if you're feeling low and you've got it on a Post-it note on your computer, care, don't carry. Take a deep breath, close your eyes and be like, I'm gonna let something go right now. I mean, sometimes it comes down to that. But here's one other tip, hot tip. One of the keys to caring without carrying is to learn to consciously accept what's within your power and what is outside your power. So let's pretend your company's downsizing. Maybe in part it's due to AI adoptions, okay? And some people have been informed that their positions are being eliminated. Others are worried that They're going to hear that news really soon. Maybe you yourself are worried that you might lose your job, right? Ambiguity, anxiety, everywhere. What is within your power? Let's say within a meeting with some of the company leadership. Let's say you're in HR and you're like, okay, we need to get aligned on some of this stuff. What can you do in that meeting? 2 buckets. You can think about it this way. The bucket within my power. Here's some things you can do. You can exercise your own inward boundaries. Inwardly, you can say, I'm a supporter, not a savior. Care, don't carry, right? These mantras actually do help. You can relay facts with candor in the meeting. You can say, hey, not everything is clear yet. Let me spell out what is clear. You can help your leaders make a case for change. If you're meeting with management and there's some big things coming, you can process the change with them so that it will create a sense of clarity and alignment. These are some questions you can ask your leadership team. And these really can move the needle in terms of confidence and momentum and clarity, which helps the entire organization. This last question about what are the consequences if the organization does not successfully implement this new operating model? What are the risks to the business, customers, your team, you? I think that's a really important and powerful question that you can ask yourself to get aligned with some of the changes and also with your leadership team. And then also you can ask supportive questions. What's the hardest part of this? What do you need? There's a philosopher named Simone Weil who thought the most profound question you can ask someone is, what are you going through? And I still think that is just it. What are you going through? And that opens the door for people to share, again, to connect, because change is hard. But then even more important, what is outside your power? The second bucket. So we've got, feelings, big feelings. Some of them are yours, some of them are others' feelings. You can't control that. You can manage it, your own, but you can't control or manage anyone else's feelings. There are going to be conflicts usually, conflicting values, priorities, and perspectives. There are going to be immovables, deadlines, tasks, processes. There's going to be probably some ongoing discomfort, and maybe even some changes to your own life and career. But just summing it all up, to stay both empathic, like caring, and boundaried, care but don't carry, we need to release our mental and emotional grip on things outside our control and just radically accept them. Just that whole notion of radical acceptance of saying, well, this is how it is, and I can't manage these things, and breathing deeply, and then saying, but what can I do still? And so
I'll just say I'll double click on this one, because this is something that I, again, personally have been working on for years. And I think it was maybe a part of a defense mechanism, because I would think the more I feel like I can control, the more I have power over what happens. And I would think I can control somebody's emotions, in a meaning like I can decrease their disappointment or their sadness, or I can increase their excitement, or, this is my team. As their leader, I'm responsible to make them feel fulfilled, or like they're passionate about their job. And so that's, I've done a lot of years of work on that, and I still teeter the line. But I would say, like, if, for any of you that are looking at this and feeling that, a big part of the reason why Andrea is talking about it is because it is so big, and it's not like you're going to see a slide and be like, oh, okie dokie, off I go, I'm not going to carry this. But to consciously think about it, or to maybe recognize it when these big changes are happening. Because a lot of times, I think, to me, what's interesting about more of the current climate is, and sometimes whether it was recessions or whether it was even COVID, there was some idea of maybe like an end in sight, or this, like, we had this belief that there was going to be an end point. And now it's this interesting time where changes are very iterative, and there are things to be very excited and optimistic about, there are things to be worried about, and there are so many different emotions. And so I think that that's where it could get even heavier if you as a leader start to think, again, the more I manage this, the more I can create this environment, the more team is going to feel a certain way. There are certain things that we can absolutely do as leaders, but we've got to remember, to Andrea's point, like what's outside of our control, because if we don't, I think we'll start to burn out on the things that we can actually control and should be controlling.
Yeah.
So I think that that's one of the really important reasons to maybe be able to see the difference.
Good.
Again, it's a work in progress. I'm saying all of this. I have not mastered it, but I've realized the importance of continuing to try.
Yes, that is important. That's such good stuff. Yeah. I like your point about like when you're worrying about the things you can't control, it leaves less bandwidth for the things you can actually do. And that's futile. Nobody wants that. So,
and I hadn't even thought about it until it just came out of my mouth.
It's brilliant. And it's so true. It's so true. Yes. So for the sake of time, I think I'm going to skip the live poll on this one, but for for those of you listening, just really take a moment to think about what is one thing you can let go of right now that's occupying your mind, your emotions, that's maybe causing you to lose sleep. And it's really something that you can't do anything about, as much as you hate that fact. Can you take a deep breath and imagine it just falling off of your shoulders? Even if it's just for 10 seconds. If it tries to crawl back on your shoulders, you can take another deep breath, right? This is a process. But then after you feel like you've gotten maybe a little distance from that thing, ask yourself, what's one thing I can do to help encourage and strengthen myself and my team during this, even if it's small. This simple set of questions is very grounding and empowering when you're feeling like my emotions are not regulated right now. This feels really hard. So that's one tool to please take with you. And then finally, part 4 here, somebody asked a question about how to stay motivated during uncertainty and change. And I love that question because so often we do just like wilt. It's too much. That's in fancy psychobabble, that's called autonomic hypoarousal. When we feel overwhelmed by environmental volatility, we kind of just go into our shell and stop caring. So this last section is going to help you hang on to yourself a little bit more and your energy within the whirlwind. This is a rhetorical question, but have you ever been around somebody who seemed eminently comfortable in their own skin? Like they know what they're about. They're real, they're authentic, they're stable, they're calm, they're connected, and they're easy to connect with. They're capable. You like being around them. They just feel so like grounded, like whomp. They're just, and then also they don't get stressed out when things change. They bend, they flex, they keep on trucking. Like they're agile, right? Sanja, does anyone come to mind? You don't have to name names, but have you met someone like this?
No, what's so wild, because you and I talked about this and I was like, who could it be? It's totally Martine, and I will totally name drop. That's my life partner. It is wild. It is wild. And now like I live with a man. I'm going to try to like soak in as much as I can from him. But it's, I was telling him even that the other day, because he has a really big team in an industry that goes through a lot of change.
Mm-hmm.
And it is just incredible. Like he is very passionate, very empathetic, very feeling, but also like very even keeled, and just does what he can. Like a lot of these things, and he is not in our profession at all. He's not a psychologist. But now that you were saying all of that, and it was like going through my brain, it is absolutely him. He just like has this, he is the yin to my yang, where I will stress and I will obsess and he'll just say like, hey, like it just is what it is. Let's do the best that we can. Let's figure out what we can do. And that grounds me so much.
I've got a man who's very similar, and I feel very lucky. Yeah, I know.
Look at us.
I know. I know.
Way to go. High five.
I know, right? So lean on your partner. That's it. No. Anyway. But
if you can't be it, find a partner who can.
Yeah, go out there and get one. But actually, that's a good point. Like just our interpersonal relationships, the people we rely on, whether it's a neighbor or a family member or a friend or even a colleague, like these are very important in times of flux. But how do you become a person like that yourself? I mean, I think, again, it's a work in progress, but rooting down into your values is a really, really big part of this. Being clear about and grounded in your values. It's like a key ingredient in the secret sauce of being that kind of a person like Martine or like Jake in my life. Your values are those beliefs and principles and behaviors that define you and guide you and give you a sense of purpose and fulfillment. And this is a list of values. Your values might not be on there, and that's okay. But just to kind of look it over, when you know in your bones what you want your life to be about and your work to be about, it makes you a consistent, confident, connected person who can weather big changes and guide other people through them too. Now, it's not like we all have a ton of time to like think about our values and meditate about our values, but I want to give you a chance to do that right now. It looks like we have a couple of minutes left. So whoever you are and wherever you are, I'd like to invite you to get comfortable in your chair and sit in a way in which your back is straight but supported. Maybe put both feet flat on the floor. Just take a deep breath, close your eyes, and feel gravity just holding your body in the chair. And while you keep just breathing naturally, I'd like you to imagine that you are 90 years old and you're sitting on a park bench reflecting back on your life with gratitude and pride. You've seen it all, you've lived it all, you've survived it all. You've crawled back from struggle, from change. You've learned and unlearned and relearned countless things. You've shown up really well for yourself and for other people through a really tumultuous era in history. And you've become the person you always wanted to be. As you sit on that bench, you can honestly say, I have become my own hero. Now take a deep breath and just ask yourself, what value words most describe this person, this future version of you? Notice what immediately comes to mind. Maybe wise, maybe graceful, maybe trustworthy, maybe consistent, maybe creative, maybe courageous. I don't know what your values are, but just listen for a moment to what comes to mind. Now, keeping in mind those words, I'd like you to imagine, keep your eyes closed, that this fully actualized 90-year-old self is with you now, with whatever change you're currently going through, related to your job or not. Whatever struggle, whatever chaos, whatever anxious thing. And with eyes of deep compassion and understanding, your elderly self looks at you and says this. Oh yeah, I remember that struggle. That was hard. But you know what? Going through that and growing through that made me who I am now. You'll survive. And maybe it won't ever be as easy and perfect as you want. You will learn to thrive and become everything I am. You'll become your own hero. You're doing it step by step. Trust it. Now take one more deep breath. And go ahead and open your eyes. Return back here to me. So that, my friends, that's what rooting down into your values can feel like. And when you can live and work and lead from that place of really compassionate self-connection, which is such a strong place to be, you're going to be able to weather change and chart new horizons with care and with courage. And also you're modeling such a wonderful way of being a consistent, integrated person for your team. And that's a huge gift. We only have like a couple minutes. We have a minute and a half left. I was curious as to what values came to people, but maybe just, Sanja, what values came to you?
You know, for me, it was interesting because I've done actually some of this like soul searching and work. So it was love and joy.
Here you go. Those are perfect for you.
And I'm like, I wish it was courage. I wish it was something, but it was those two, and they were just very, very clear. What about you?
Compassion and courage always come to me as the top two, and I'm working on both. Those are, love and joy too. Like it's every day we look for ways to live these things out, but it's not easy. But you know what they are, and you can be clear about them and keep them top of mind. It really helps you lead yourself well. and others. So just to sum up, here are some of the things we talked about today. Hopefully some of it resonated with you, whatever situation you're in with your organization. As you go throughout your day, just remember these things. With teams, prioritize clear, consistent connection. With decision-making, try to be inclusive, yet strategic when gathering input. And keep that momentum going as much as you can with making decisions and implementing changes. Emotions, make sure to manage your emotions in a way that's focused on controlling the controllables and just letting go of the rest. And then finally, lead yourself in a way that's rooted into your deepest values. And that's all I got.
Thank you so much. I'm still like flying on cloud 9 from the meditation.
Oh, good. I love that one too.
There were even tears, Andrea. There were even tears.
Wow. Oh, that's awesome. I hope it leaves you grounded for the rest of your day.
Oh, absolutely. And more. And I know we need to wrap up. Unfortunately, we're at the end of the hour. But Crystal, I think you were gonna pop in maybe a couple of takeaways from Andrea. Crystal's our producer in the back. If you have a chance to put in the chat the link to, I think Andrea, we were gonna share your book, and there was one more thing. We were gonna pop in, and if Crystal's not around to do it, we'll definitely send it out in the follow-up email. Yeah. There she is.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for everything that you shared. Thank you for all of you that joined us, that interacted, that commented before the session, after the session. Please feel free to reach out to, and connect with Andrea, connect with myself. Hopefully you can tell we're both really, really passionate about this topic, and both always students for life, ourselves working on these different areas. So we're definitely not here to tell you we've conquered these mountains, but that we believe that they're worth conquering. So thank you again, Andrea, from the bottom of my heart for today, for every day, for all the good that you bring into the world, all the wisdom, all the compassion, and all the courage and everything that you do. So all the gratitude to you.
Yes, much gratitude to you too for your joy and your care and your brilliant wisdom. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, everybody.